Um, Hi, I hope you've been well since the last tutorial. It's me, Felicity, again. And now I think the next level, since we've figured out how to sketch, is to now figure out how do we turn our sketch into a 3D model. So let us go to the sketch because it's not what I want to use for this tutorial. I'll delete it and start over. So from the very, let's use the maybe front plane, so view normal too, and we'll be able to see the front plane. So here is where we want to do our sketch. So we want to start a new sketch. So instead you could right click and start the sketch from here, or you could start the sketch from up here on the toolbox. It's the same thing. So for this one we'll ask you to select a plane. So I select the front plane, and now it knows that I'm drawing on the front plane. So let's draw something simple. I always start with rectangles for reasons I don't understand, because it makes life easier. Let's just say that. Center point rectangle, start it at the center and create something here. Let's give it some fancy details like holes. Let's say a hole here, a hole here. So I could want to put a hole here, but then I cannot determine the distance from this other hole, right? So if I want to be able to have the hole be the same size and the same distance from this plane, I just go to mirror along this plane, and then I'll say I want the other hole to just mirror itself there. And then I'll go to dimensions and decide that hole is 22. Wow, well, let's just say 10 millimeters, and you can see now that's a problem, right? If by changing the size of this hole, I'm changing the whole size of the design, it's definitely going to be a problem because there's a constraint that is happening. However, let's not look at the constraint, but for now I just want you to understand how to turn this into a 3D shape. Then we were going to start examining those constraints, but automatically it becomes parametric by nature, especially now that we put the constraint of this is mirrored along this line up to here. So if this changes in size, then everything else will be modified. So for now, let it stay in that format. Let's give it something fancy a little. Let's say I want to fillet the edges. 10 millimeters, and this one too. And they become more curvaceous. We could add more things. You can add more things, but you get the flow. So we're not sketching right now. What we want to do is 3D modeling. So here's where it all happens, the extrude. So the extrude function is what is going to turn this into a 3D function, a 3D model. So now this will extrude the faces of sketch 1. Then you decide, is it blind, is it symmetric, is it up to next, up to face, up to part, up to vertex, and through all. So all these are different, right? Symmetric means it will extrude symmetrically along the plane. So part of the object will be on the front plane, and part of it will be at the back plane. So if you look at this, you can see the plane is here and it's extruding towards the top, right? If we change it to symmetric so that you can see in real time what happens, the plane will be in between the extrusion. Half of it extrudes that way and half of it that way. If it's up to plane, there has to be a plane that it needs to go up to, and that only happens when in an advanced level of modeling where you kind of already have a shape, and then there's another plane, and then it will be able to go up to a face or up to a part or a vertex or through all. So most of the time you'll use blind, and that's what was the default. except on certain occasions, which you'll see as we get advanced. So here it's complaining that it doesn't have any faces to extrude, so you really have to select that for it to extrude it. So as you can see also, when I put holes here, by default it will extrude the hole. So if I select that hole, it will also be extruded. If I unselect it, it will remain as a hole. So basically the software has different ways of interpreting a sketch, and the more you sketch, the more you understand that if I put a hole during the sketch period, this is what's going to happen. So, and then another thing you need to define is the depth of which it will be extruded, so the thickness of the material that is extruded. So for now we can say like 30 millimeters and press enter. So for it to be accepted, you have to accept here. So another thing you can know about the extrude function, it can be add, it can be so here it's a new, it means it creates a new object. If it's an add extrusion, we're going to see that it adds something on top of the surface. If it's remove, it removes and intersect, just joins the two. So we're going to do that. So let's first create this, then we try an add extrusion. So if you want to add, let us view normal to this. For example, we already have this surface, so what we want to do is that we want to sketch on top of the surface. So we'll right click on top of the surface and then we write a new sketch. So I want to show you the other ways that you can extrude things. Let's say we want to put a polygon here, right? Let's just make it a 7 figure, and this is what we want to extrude, right? So we're going to go to extrude, we'll select what we want to extrude, which is that. Let us look at that, the default, that's what we want to extrude. Let's rotate that and see. Are you seeing that? That's the blind extrusion, and it's assuming that you want to add some material to this. So that's its default interpretation of what you want to do. Maybe you don't want to add, so you want to remove, so you say remove, see what happens. Maybe you forgot to put a hole and now you want to put it. It's taking a minute, but it will catch up. I think it's a connectivity problem. And then the other function is intersect. So if you're intersecting, it means that the two, so the first object you created and then this new extrusion will just intersect and become one object. If you're saying add, it means that you're adding something on top of this. However, it will not exactly be part of they will not be exactly be the same object, so that should be noted. So you're saying intersect, that is when they're going to be joined. Then the other things you can do, wow, there's so many things you can do with the 3D modeling. So your edges, things like fillets, the same thing we did with the sketch is what will happen if you're filleting on the 3D. So here, if you click on an edge, it needs to fillet. Okay. Let's down.